Welcome in, my people. Yes, football is here. Yes, I'm here with Justin Michael. Yes, producer Kale's behind the board. We are ready for football. We are setting the tone, baby, because it's week 1. So we are here to get you started right before Thursday Night Football. Booyah. Good. What are these called? Good company. That's what we are doing. We appreciate your good company for tuning in and joining us and really setting the tone. As I was saying, week 1, we start off, so we're doing this right before kickoff. But from here on until the rest of the season, you can expect us before Monday Night Football kicks off to preview the week ahead and get you set, get your lineup set. And this whole show is all about you, your lineup conundrums. We will be reaching out. We will have some audio questions. We will have written questions. We can't wait to interact with you all year. I can't wait to start off with my guy, Justin Michael here. Justin, how are you feeling merely a half hour before NFL kickoff really starts?
We just dropped the Vibes collection here at DNVR.
Oh, yeah.
Little plug. Go check it out before we sell out. I just loaded up on shirts. Dre loaded up on shirts. Kale's rocking the Vibes shirt right now. And I just think it's so perfect, the timing with it all, because, I mean, the Vibes don't get any more immaculate than college football season and NFL season. Week 1, it is here. Fantasy football, bets, we're all back. God, it feels so good. And I'm with good friends, good people, got a good company.
Exactly.
Seltzer here. I mean, Breck Brew doesn't get any better than that.
Oh, it's so true. So much to get into. If you caught our season preview, if you didn't, rather, go check that out. But it's too late for that. So what are we looking for as we get prepared for this Thursday Night Football? Let's start by looking at some of the matchups we are most intrigued by or potentially scared off in this game, and some of those props from our good people at DraftKings Sportsbook that we like in this game. I've talked about it on bets. I'm kind of feeling a high-scoring game from our good people at DraftKings. Probably too big of a spread here.
You know, I know Dallas is missing Zach Martin, but I was kind of thinking the same thing.
Total's high, man. It's really high. We'll see how having fans back impacts.
That's a good point. I mean, you're defending Super Bowl champs. There's going to be some.
Yes.
There's going to be some juice with that crowd. I don't know, man. As much as I tend to agree, especially early in the season, that it's going to be a high-scoring game. But then I think back and Tampa Bay, it was an offense that carried them to that Super Bowl championship. You know, it's that defense and that defensive front seven in particular. That's got to be a little bit nerve-wracking if you are Dallas, missing your best offensive lineman. You're not 100% sure how healthy Dak is.
Yep, right.
You want to run the ball effectively with Zeke, but again, that's kind of running right into the strength of this Tampa Bay defense.
Absolutely, with a healthy Vita Vea who should be back. Yeah, I know. So it really is and I have some people who've reached out and I know maybe drafted Tom Brady late in a league and are planning on starting him a couple times in those first couple months and then probably dumping him. Is this one of those weeks where you get in against this lowly Cowboys defense, a defense that lost Kelvin Johnson, weren't able to draft J.C. Horn or Patrick Surtain as both those guys go ahead of them, get Kelvin Johnson in the second round. He's now out for the season. So the defense is depleted, but you're right. Brady never quite in sync with that offense. Could he be more in sync with the full offseason after having played a full year with them?
Well, and the other thing is, I mean, if you watch Tampa early in that season, it was a much different offense than what they were running late in the year. Late in the year, they kind of just let Brady do his thing. And I got to imagine they're just
how very Kubiak Peyton Manning was that relationship, right? Yeah.
It was, you want to know what? It's not working. We trust you. Get
Exactly.
these. You have the weapons on offense. Get these guys ready to go.
I need to win 3, so just
do it.
Run your shit and do it. Yeah,
and you got to imagine that's just going to be their approach all season, especially given we already talked about the defensive talent that they have.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think I would be willing to play Tom Brady in this matchup. There's a lot of questions about this Dallas defense. You wonder, what are they going to look like at linebacker? Got an opportunity with a couple of good tight ends on the roster. Even so, I'm not huge on Gronk this year, but I Yeah, I would play Tom Brady, especially just it's a good matchup, right? I mean, this Dallas defense.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not going to get much better than facing the Cowboys.
It's perfect.
With Brady having months on end to prepare for it. Like, it's kind of perfect. Gun to your head. If you had both on your team, who would you start, Dak or Brady?
I would go with Brady, I think.
I think I would too.
And that feels crazy to say, just considering Dak, before he got hurt last year, he was the number one fantasy quarterback in football, was putting up massive numbers. I still have faith in his ability to recover this year.
Yeah.
It's just the matchups, You're going up against an elite defense in Tampa Bay versus Brady going up against a very pedestrian defense in the Dallas Cowboys. I would lean Brady just in this one particular matchup.
Yeah, and they're both very deep receiving cores, so it really comes down to the defense and the O-line health. Brady has the advantage on both of those. But that's kind of surprising. I think a lot of people might have drafted Dak in the 5th or 6th round of their league, Brady closer to the 10th round.
You would hope. I mean,
But
I'm in one league where Brady went
decision.
in the first round. And
Whoa.
yeah.
That person's crazy.
It is a league where you start 2 quarterbacks, so it does, you do draft quarterbacks earlier just because they're such an important part of your roster.
Is it a dynasty?
No, but to take him in the first round, it was the wrong
absurd,
call.
bro.
It was the wrong call.
Absurd, bro.
I got Matt Ryan in the 13th round for comparison.
Gun to your head with Mike Evans, Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown. Any of these guys you start? Like as a wide receiver 2 or 1?
I like any of those Cowboys receivers as a wide receiver 2 option. The problem that you have when you have Amari Cooper, you have CeeDee Lamb, you have Michael Gallup, it's just
diluted.
Exactly. Yeah. Which guy is going to pop on any given week? That's the constant battle and you could honestly probably have a similar complaint about the Tampa Bay offense. Is it a Chris Godwin week? Is it a Mike Evans week?
Big time, man.
But if I was going to play anyone, I would probably put CeeDee Lamb as my top choice. I think he's in for a big year. They took him in the first round. And I just think he's the guy they're investing in moving forward. I know they signed Amari Cooper to a 5-year deal before 2020, but there is an opt-out after this season. He's a guy that makes $20 million a year. Michael Gallup in a contract here. Maybe you can move Cooper later in the year. But as far as this week 1, I'm leaning CeeDee Lamb. And then probably Mike Evans. It's kind of hard to predict with this Tampa Bay offense, but he's probably who I would put the most faith in just in terms of consistent targets.
Yeah, you would probably side with the Cowboys wide receiver, thinking that the Bucs will nurse a lead for at least, 40% of the game, something like that, right?
That's another great point. If Dallas is playing from behind,
you're going to have to chuck it up. And, gun to my head, hard to know which one, but if I have to pick one of those 3, I guess I'd go CD. Also worth remembering, as much as there's dilution among the touches all those wide receivers get, it is beneficial to not have much of a tight end.
No, yeah, especially, on the draft pod, I talked about tight end being a big focus probably for Dallas in this upcoming draft. For years they relied on Jason Witten, Trey McBride, team DNVR athlete, a guy that they could have their eyes on. They've taken a lot of Mountain West guys, and they've got Kellen Moore at OC. It's just something to keep an eye on, but as much as the delusion is going to frustrate you as a Dallas Cowboys wide receiver fantasy owner, I still had all 3 of those guys in my top 30, which means, on any week-to-week basis, you're probably comfortable in at least playing them as a wide receiver 2, if not a flex option. It just kind of depends, I don't know if I'd feel great if those were my top guys, but my second, my third receiving options, you're probably doing pretty good.
Yeah, and as far as Tampa goes, I'm scared off by all those guys. It really comes down to who's getting the touchdown, who's getting the big play. It's a very kind of deke and dunk offense, unsurprisingly, with Brady, so that's a bit hard. Okay, well, that's our feelings on the matchup for tonight. Let's get into anyone who missed our season preview. You can find the whole thing on YouTube. We really went through all our quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end rankings, some draft strategies, and so on and so forth. We can look at some of those, or we can even just chat anyone who stands out on the guys you are really bullish on coming into the season that you think could really blow up week 1.
Yeah, I came into the season really high on the potential of this LA Rams offense, especially with Matthew Stafford and McVay. I think early in the year especially, we're going to see them kind of air it out. I do think they'll be pretty balanced, but I don't know, just early in the year, I feel like it's a pretty strong matchup for Stafford. They're going against the Bears, and they're at home, which I love. You know, they don't have to go to Soldier Field. So I feel pretty good about Matthew Stafford, especially, you know, excuse me. I think he's one of the best value quarterbacks in fantasy football this year.
It's crazy where he's going.
People
firmly out of the top 11.
And I think there's a good chance, like, he could be a top 5 fantasy quarterback. I don't think that's unrealistic to say. Him and Matt Ryan, I feel very similarly. And I think Matt Ryan's another great example of a guy that it's a really favorable matchup for him, especially at home. You're going against a poor Philadelphia Eagles defense, exactly. In the dome. I really like both of these quarterbacks in their week 1 matchups.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of, well, we'll get into it in some of my conundrums on my fantasy teams, but as crazy as it sounds, week 1, as high as I am at Stafford as well, guys like Jameis, kind of interesting against the Packers, who've been up and down rather than Stafford. That's an interesting one. I'll go the other way. A guy I'm pretty high on, Kale, Austin Eckler, everyone knows. Washington football team, very high. He's coming off an injury. A little skeptical on Austin this week.
It's a hammy too, and for those speed guys, you don't feel great about it. Speaking of quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts. The Eagles probably going to be not good this year, but there's a baseline in fantasy with the way scoring is done right now where quarterbacks who get you rushing yards and rushing touchdowns are just going to do work. And Jalen Hurts, a lot of people probably got value when they took him in later rounds as a later round quarterback because he wasn't going high. I'd start him until you can't because he's going to probably get 80 to 100 yards on the ground every game.
Yeah, and he's still going quite high in leagues. I was surprised in some ADPs regularly being drafted higher than Stafford and Matt Ryan, guys we just spoke on. But you're right, that rushing is really key. And as bad as he looked at times in the preseason, we saw the kind of fantasy numbers he put up last year. Those were scary. So, you know, that's definitely something you would want to jump on. I am incredibly intrigued by how all of these young quarterbacks with really favorable matchups are going to rank in week 1. And since you bring up Jalen Hurts, I'm going to go to that right now. And yeah, let's have a fun little exercise. First, second-year quarterbacks plus Darnold and Winston, who kind of fall into that.
New teams, new system, like first year. And
right, we've never really seen them. So Hurts, very promising matchup here. He and the Eagles taking on the Falcons, who, of course, have struggled mightily over the years. Burrow and the Bengals taking on the Vikings, a defense that's certainly hurt itself. Darnold, you love this, taking on his old team. Revenge game. That's fun. Zach Wilson, yo, what up, you want a beast? Zach Wilson, other way, playing against Darnold. Trevor Lawrence getting about as easy a rookie debut as you're going to get against the Texans. Herbert, very tough matchup against the football team. We just talked about that with Eckler. Then you have Tua taking on the Pats. That Pats defense could be revolutionized from what we saw a year ago. You remember they were record-breaking pace 2 years ago, had the most absences due to COVID, the most holdouts, what do we call those?
Yeah, opt-outs.
Opt-outs, thank you. And now they're going to be back full strength, and Belichick was spending plenty of money, right?
No Stephon Gilmore, though, and that's the one thing that,
huge.
You know, he's their kind of elite lockdown corner. If you are putting a little stock in Miami, that's probably the reason why. I would say I'd feel a lot better about this matchup as a Dolphins backer if this game was in Miami versus in New England.
Ooh, yes.
But on top of that,
those games suck to travel to. For the Northeast teams coming down to Miami, always a disaster, yeah.
But again, it's just, you know, when you think about the matchups and the coaching, and Belichick has had all offseason to focus on one game plan. If I'm going up against Belichick in fantasy week 1, I'm not feeling great. But there's a lot of interesting matchups. I mean, you mentioned Justin Herbert and the matchup against Washington. I think a lot of people might get scared away from that. I would say I think this Washington defense is very talented, and I don't want to diminish them or what they accomplished last season.
Oh boy.
They did beat up on a lot of bad teams, though.
Gonna make me mad now, huh?
And with all of these quarterback options, as you know, I think if you're looking at the Washington defense, the strength is in that front seven, right?
Oh yeah.
So I don't hate the matchup
Even
with
front
Justin
five.
Herbert going up against them, especially given I think they're gonna have to lean on that passing game with Austin Eckler's help. Now,
That's a good point.
it's tough to say, you know, Herbert, it wouldn't shock me if he comes down to reality in year 2. But week 1, I actually ranked him as my number 1 quarterback out of all these options, even going against Washington. I think it's the toughest defense of any of these quarterbacks.
Right.
I just think the circumstances still favor him. But my other favorite one, and you mentioned it, is just the revenge game. Sam Darnold,
Yeah.
starting for Carolina. He's with an innovative caller and Joe Brady. He's got the best weapons that he's ever had in his career by far, including the only good one he had in New York and Robbie Anderson. But you got McCaffrey. You know, you got DJ Moore on the outside.
Oh, they're loaded.
It feels like an
loaded,
opportunity, especially going against a really young Jets defense for Sam Darnold to have a nice 30-point fantasy game.
Super young defense. Also, reports out of Panthers camp. Number 1, their defense isn't going to be very good, so they're going to have to throw a lot. And number 2, reports are that the offensive line looks way better than people were probably expecting coming into things. And
It's gonna have to be, so that's good to hear.
It's going to have to be, so that's good news. And I like your pick, Justin. That's all I'm saying.
Interesting. I am very scared off by Herbert. I am bullish on that football team.
Justin, all season because you think Herbert's coming back to life, or just because this Washington matchup?
Just this week,
Okay.
Washington matchup. And then on it, so I might rank as my top guy out of this group. I'd be very torn between Winston taking on the Packers and Trevor Lawrence, just because it's the Texans. The Texans are truly they've given up all hope. And then I think Hurts Burrow would be pretty high on that list for me. But it's an interesting exercise. Hopefully this only applies to 2 quarterback leagues. Because that's certainly where it applies for me. You'd be in trouble.
Speaking of the Texans, might be good to put in a waiver claim or a trade for Phillip Lindsay or Mark Ingram after the Gus Edwards injury today, because guess what? The Ravens are looking for a running back.
That's phenomenal advice. You won't get that from every fantasy podcast producer in the world. That's our guy putting in that extra work for us.
I put in a claim on Le'Veon Bell as a Gus Edwards owner. So
No, that's not a bad one. As my guys put in extra work, you don't have to put in the extra work when you are on the DraftKings Sportsbook app, the number 1 sportsbook in the land, in the world. Opening up everywhere. Our good friends up in Arizona getting to enjoy the fruits of that labor today. We have nothing but great deals. You better get in right now on free money, which is the Bucs plus 73. That's right, a 73-point spread on the 9-point favorite Tampa Bay Bucs. Get that at even money, free $25, free $50, whatever you want. And with the NFL season, you can get in on same-game parlays. It is phenomenal. So, get in on that now. New users bet $1 and win up to $200. It is truly incredible stuff. And give me that read, would ya? Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. Bonus comprised of first deposit bonus and a first bet match, each up to $500. Deposit bonus requires 25 times playthrough. Restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700. Check them out. Nothing but great deals. Lots of these wagers that you can apply to the DraftKings Sportsbook. Kale, what else do you have for us?
Oh, we have to mention that there's a $50 max bet on that free bet for tonight.
We mentioned that, $50. Some have said $25. Some are saying that it's up to their app. I don't care.
I was going to say, when I tried to do it, it only let me do 25. So
maybe it's an Arizona thing, because I bet $50 last night.
I bet 50, and it
I
took
also
it
did.
in
Same.
Colorado.
Interesting. I don't know, man.
It's based on the Kale. As I'm busting these segments out, you hit me with any good questions. Okay, I know you've been
Let's hit this one real quick.
Okay, let's do it.
I touched it in the comments, but just because it's time sensitive, Tonyan or Gronk against Dallas?
I would lean Tonyan.
I'd lean Tonyan all the way.
I'm just not very high on Gronk coming in. I know he had 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl, and I think that's probably going to inflate his draft status a little bit. He just wasn't a big part of that Tampa Bay offense other than the Super Bowl. And again, maybe they find a way to get him more involved, but based on what we've seen as of this point, I just have more faith putting my stock in Tonyan. And, again, like, Brady relies on his tight ends, but so does Aaron Rodgers, and I think that's going to be a massive part of that Packers offense.
Second time-sensitive question. Rojo or Brandon Cooks?
Or Brandon Cooks.
That's a tougher one.
I'd go Cooks. I'm big Rojo guy, but hard to rely on anything with that Tampa Bay backfield. So I'd go Cooks.
Tyrod Taylor has to throw to someone.
He does have to throw to someone. I agree. And, he has been productive when he's been healthy. Cooks, that is. So
I'd probably lean Ronald Jones, whatever it's worth. I know that doesn't help you. Now we got a little bit of discrepancy, but when it comes to these Jags, Houston players, I just have a hard time. Even Trevor Lawrence, like going up against Houston, I'm like,
you got
their offensive line can't block, though.
Thanks for tuning in, brother. We look forward to doing this every week. Yeah. It's a good point. It's honestly a good point. How about some Broncos versus Giants matchup? Maybe the matchup you think is juiciest for the Broncos, and the matchup that you think is the biggest stay away in here. I've given us a couple suggestions here. Broncos cornerbacks versus the Giant wide receivers. For example, I wouldn't touch many of the Giant wide receivers, but then when you go to the bottom, Ingram looks like he's out. So you can omit that. But guys like Saquon, Kadarius Toney, you worry about those options over the middle of the field, especially as they're able to exploit the linebacker matchup.
Yeah, I mean, if I was a Giants fan, I'd definitely be licking my lips a little bit at the potential of Toney versus this team. That said, I mean, with Ingram especially being out, I think the options that they're going to have on the outside are limited. Maybe you're able to put one of these top DBs on him, and that kind of offsets some things. But I'm going to be interested to see, where does Patrick Surtain, who is he going up against in this matchup? Toney versus Denver, I feel great about, but I feel pretty good about going with Sutton or Judy against these Giants DBs. I don't know if I feel as great about Noah Fant. I do like Jabril Peppers and his ability to kind of neutralize the middle of the field, but I feel pretty good about Denver's chances to take advantage on the outside.
Jabril Peppers, really good real life last year, gave up. We're in the top 10 in points given up to tight ends. So
important to remember. That's a great fact.
That's very important. Probably the other side of that coin is, man, that D-line for the Giants pretty stout. I'm feeling it out with my Broncos running backs. I won't be starting anyone. I am benching Javonte Williams in one league.
This one was tough for me because I do think Javonte is going to get a healthy amount of touches. And so, again, that could be a situation where just from the pure volume he's able to pop. But I agree with Dre's logic here. I think the wide receivers are the way to go over the running backs. And as skeptical as I am of Noah Fant, after what Kale said, I'd still probably lean him over the running backs in this matchup. I think could be a tough game for Denver's run game.
Let's get into some of our scariest matchups now for no-brainer starters. There you go. We've got some toughies. Allen Robinson taking on Ramsey and the Rams. He's a no-brainer starter. The league where I've got Allen Robinson, I have no other options.
Well, I mean, he's a guy you were probably taking as a wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2, and I'm kind of in a similar position with Adam Thielen.
Sucks, right? You are.
You kind of have to because he's your wide receiver, but you don't love it.
Yeah. At least you have Devontae Adams there against Lattimore. You trust Rodgers. Robinson, it's like we're really going to have to figure out this Bears QB thing for a second.
Well, and on top of that, you got to worry about LA's pass rush and
yeah, right.
How big of a factor is that going against Andy Dalton in Chicago? Yeah, that one would worry me a little bit.
All right, Justin, we've answered some of your biggest lineup conundrums. I want your biggest lineup conundrum going into the week, and I shall share mine next week. I look forward to doing more of yours as we get this all going and start to make your voices more central in this here podcast. What was your biggest debate, man?
Yeah, I'm kind of struggling with wide receivers. I like the talent that I have. It's just a matter of who do I play. So
yeah,
I've got Stephon Diggs going up against Pittsburgh. I like that. I'm going to play him.
Mm-hmm.
I've got Justin Jefferson going against Cincinnati. There's a little bit of worry about Jefferson's hamstring coming in, but I'm going to play him. He's expected to play. So my big question is, do I go Cortland Sutton against the Giants, or do I go Michael Gallup against the Buccaneers? And again, time sensitive because Michael Gallup tonight. I lean Cortland Sutton just because wide receiver 1 versus probably wide receiver 3, or at the very minimum wide receiver 2, depending on what you think of the Sutton-Judy situation. This is, for Kale and for Dre.
I'm a little worried by Sutton's health.
I am too, especially week 1. I'm almost...
Exactly. I'd almost go Gallup, man.
I'd go Gallup.
Matchup.
I'd go Gallup, but man, that worries me. That worries me against this secondary, man. Especially he's playing in the slot. They've got one of the best nickel packages in the league. I don't know.
It's such a in-your-bag conundrum, the CSU guy versus the Broncos guy, too.
I know. Like, my heart leans both ways. I love both of these guys.
Right.
I lean Gallup. That's what I have in my starting lineup right now, but I don't know, man. I'm tempted to do something. Excuse me. Allergies have been killing me lately these last couple weeks.
My dilemma, I really would go Gallup on that one, man.
I'm going to stick with it. It's who I have, and I'm just going to be like, you want to know what? If Sutton goes off week 1, I'll be excited as a Broncos fan. I'll be bummed as a fantasy owner, but...
It's a 12-team keeper league, and I've got 2 flex spots. So in my first, I'm putting my third running back, and that's Kareem Hunt. I've got Chubb and Josh Jacobs. And
that's a solid running back core, man.
Yeah, Matt Ryan at quarterback. But then for this third slot, behind my 2 wide receivers, I'm thinking of starting Byron Edwards. That's the South Carolina guy, right,
yeah.
for the Raiders. The other options, usually I would start Will Fuller, but this is his last suspension game.
I also have Will Fuller, who I couldn't play this week.
I could start Valdez-Scantling. That's a nice-ish matchup with New Orleans, especially if we think Adams is getting locked down a little. I could go Gage, who know Julio, could be doing big things. Rondale Moore, or like Damon Harris, the New England Patriots running back.
Off the top of my head, I like Russell Gage just because you're going against a poor Philadelphia secondary.
Honestly.
You are at home in the Dome, no Julio. I mean, Calvin Ridley is going to be Atlanta's undisputed wide receiver 1, but Atlanta over the years, I mean, they've been a team where they're kind of like Dallas, where 2-3 guys are going to put up big numbers.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I'm leaning Russell Gage out of all those choices.
Honestly, I love that advice. Thank you very much. Well, we are merely 5 minutes before kickoff. I don't think we'll be cutting it quite as close on our Monday shows, but it has been a blast being here with you. Thank you to Justin Michael. Thank you to producer Kale. Thank you to you all for tuning in, listening, sharing your fantasy conundrums. Cannot wait to see you all in 4 days to break down what we saw in week 1 and get ready for week 2. It's going to be a blast. Best of luck with your fantasy matchups this week. We'll be right back Monday.